Hey everyone, this is technically a sequel video to an older one that I made about Dryosaurus, which was back in the update 4.5 days. Definitely doesn't feel like it's been quite as long as it has been, but I guess time flies when playing the Isle every other day and waiting for updates isn't the only thing you occupy yourself with. For those who don't remember, I went over what people feel is missing from Dryosaurus and gave my own take on it while trying to compromise with those two things, and Dryo did end up getting an attack buff, so I guess half of my job is done there. I expressed a desire to make more dinosaur ideas but never really got round to it, and while I do want to cover those still, I'd rather take a look at the other herbivore the game has that most would consider to be useless and incomplete, and also taking a quick peek at a certain upcoming omnivore afterwards. Hypsilophodon has always been known as the troll dinosaur ever since it first got added almost 2 years ago, with 90% of people only playing it to mess around, annoy other players, and stockpile food in a corner of the map in order to play another dinosaur with. They've already expressed before that there are more things to be done with Hypsi, and unlike the Dryo, I'm not going to suggest for those things to be removed or restricted because they do suit the dinosaur just fine, and will actually be perfect for my idea as you'll see going forward. Hypsi is very small, it lacks any health to tank hits with, it even lacks some of the speed it needs to reliably get away from carnivores unless it turns like a maniac, and it's basically only used out of complete boredom because it doesn't have a growth yet and maybe won't ever have one, but we'll see about that. They expressed before that they want to give climbing to it along with Herrerasaurus in the future, so keep that in mind as we go along because that's a surprise tool that will help us later. Going the opposite route of Dryo, we're going to be giving burrowing to Hypsi instead of taking it away from it, and I know, another small tier being given burrowing as part of its kit, I hate it too, but bear with me here because I promise I can make it seem at least more worthwhile than being on bloody Minmi. I wanted to give it this because I figured it'd make for an interesting way to make nesting more unique on certain playables, and to tie it in with a part of my Dryo suggestion of it being able to harass other burrowers or repurpose their homes for short periods of time. To make sure that Hypsi is given a proper reason to use its burrows in the first place, and have a reason to make them large enough for something like Dryo to fit in them, I want to introduce some incentives for nesting inside of a burrow as opposed to outside of it, which the burrow would need to be expanded both horizontally and vertically to accommodate for said nests. How you expand a burrow is mostly unimportant really because you only need to accommodate for specific things, but if I were to make it any specific way, I would just have you kick the dirt out of the burrow if you pair inside of it with a little animation, or do it manually if you didn't by holding down a certain button. But we can't only give them shelter and expect that to be enough incentive to use nests in burrows, especially due to the fact that some dinosaurs will be able to raid those nests. Which is why I'm also bringing out the idea for you to be able to dig some little extra holes to place coconuts in. By using your climbing system, you'll be able to reach and pluck coconuts from the trees, which would break open automatically upon being forced to the ground. Using the opened coconut pieces that you can grab in your mouth, you can go to a water source to fill it up with water. Then place the coconut in the little pit that you dug for a source of water that you will have to replenish every now and then, that will keep your hatchlings thirst up, so you don't need to waste your own water when they beg for food and spend more time catering to and defending the nest. They'll also still be able to drink from it when they become juveniles too, so they can keep growing in the burrow. This will obviously cause for some of its diet and migration areas to be shared with peckies, causing for a possible relationship between the two, where Hypsis can get coconuts for small peckies, peckies can give some broken open coconuts to the Hypsis, and give them protection whilst keeping them away from nests. And the Hypsis also help them defend against predators too. I would also place one of its migration areas at or near the redwoods, for obvious reasons. Hypsi's spit should also be reworked to be more like a shotgun with a spread, so that you don't have to slowly aim your spit when in the heat of a chase. Personally, I loved this idea when I came up with it yesterday, and I think it's raw as hell, combining uses for burrows that aren't just keeping an inviolable dinosaur safe, with uses for climbing and nesting and creating more relationships between animals, like with my suggestion about Dryo, and its relationships with stegos as well as other slower herbivores. I think that this would make for a perfect introduction to burrowing as a mechanic, with two playables in-game partially reworked to be a burrower and a burrow repurposer / invader. as well as both still having characteristics that make them worth playing without their respective relationships and or burrows. Lastly, I wanted to take a moment to talk about Gallimimus, because Galli is coming to the game relatively soon, and I think that it's a perfect opportunity to get this out. I don't think that Galli should be an omnivore. Don't get me wrong, the Struthiomimus in the Land Before Time were pretty cool, but not only does being an egg-stealing omnivore really mess with the implementation of Oviraptor, especially considering Galli is stronger and probably faster as well, but also just the kind of majestic dino you'd want to see in or near a herd. Because of this, I think Gallimimus should be a herbivore instead of an omnivore, because it really doesn't have a need to be, and might end up just straight up outclassing Ovi at everything. So with the changes I've discussed over these two videos, I hope that would be enough to make both creatures interesting to play, as well as making it so that Galli doesn't outshine certain playables at everything they do. If you'd like, put in some suggestions of what I should try to quote-unquote fix next, because I enjoy doing these kinds of things, and while it does take time to think of the ideas, it's always really satisfying when it comes together. I hope some of the things I discussed tickled your fancy, and have a great day everyone. Before I go, I'd like to thank my patrons for helping make all this content possible and supporting me like this. If you'd like to support the channel any further, you can always check it out with the link in the description.